Thank you. Mayo Gisikau, good afternoon, good day. My name is Jonna Blackhair. I'm the Deputy Bureau Director for Trust Services. As you hear, our support for our leadership intent. The Department of Interior leadership and staff must ensure that we are fulfilling our trust responsibility, which consists of our highest moral obligations to the United States and to tribes. We must meet to ensure the protection of tribal and individual Indian lands, assets, resource, and treaty and similarly recognized tribal rights. The Office of Trust Services, Division of Real Estate Services, has various ongoing high priority initiatives, again, this fiscal year, including Deed of Trust, Broadband, Rights of Way, Mortgages, and Hearth. It is my pleasure today to be here with the Division of Real Estate Services as they host this session to provide updates on high priority topics, policy updates, and respond to nationwide issues, specifically impacting our Indian communities. During these sessions, we hope that we are able to lend technical assistance to help build communication lines to promote positive impacts in our tribal communities. The Division of Real Estate Services was asked to examine BIA policies, handbooks, legislations, and program areas to identify ways in which we could streamline various leasing and conveyance processes. This will help ensure that timelines are best being met for the benefit of Indian tribes and individuals, and they are at our highest priority. With that, I turn it over to Ms. Carla Clark, Acting Division Chief for the Division of Real Estate Services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Jonna, and thank you, Wizzy, for the introductions and being here today. My name is Carla Clark. I'm currently the Acting Division Chief for the Division of Real Estate Services out of BIA Central Office of Trust Services. And to appreciate everyone's time today and everyone in attendance, we are going to do an overview of the National Policy Memorandum that was mentioned by Mr. Garrett, and then go through some resource links at the end and provide some contact information for you all. Next slide, please. So this just gives a brief overview of the mission of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Office of Trust Services. As is stated, Jonna Blackhair is the Deputy Director of the Office of Trust Services, which houses the Division of Real Estate Services. Next slide, please. This talks a little bit about BIA's Office of Trust Services, the programs administered, and who our responsibilities are to nationwide. We service American Indians and Alaska Native tribes and beneficiaries with their natural resources and real estate services. Next slide, please. This talks a little bit more about who we serve. We do also offer services to contract and compact tribes that have servicing responsibilities to real estate services functions, and those are housed within the 12 regions and 83 agencies nationwide within BIA. Okay, next slide, please. So for today's session, as we talked about a little bit earlier, the Department of Interior and BIA determined that rights of ways and business lease applications for the purposes of infrastructure do provide a direct benefit to the Indian land, Indian trust lands. And especially during these unprecedented times, infrastructure and access to broadband are very important to tribal communities. So with this national policy memorandum, we took a look at streamlining and making efficient and effective processing of right-of-ways and business lease applications for the bill projects and bill funding. The NPM includes projects for infrastructure, broadband, renewable energy, and it's on trust and restricted lands. And this is to streamline right-of-way and business lease processes. And so all of these support the implementation of the bill funding, and that's what this national policy memorandum is regarding as well. This memorandum establishes BIA policy for efficient, effective processing. And so we have shared this policy memorandum with all the agencies and regions and tribal compact staff. We've also sent out letters that were signed by Mr. Wizapan Garrett to the tribal leaders and also to our federal partners, as well as industry leaders. The goals of this national policy memorandum include reducing barriers and making sure that we have consistent processing and applications of right-of-ways nationwide throughout BIA agencies and regions. And also we're looking forward to making sure we have consistent encoding of these leases into the TAMS system, which is the Trust Asset and Accounting Management System, which is BIA's official system of record. And we use TAMS system to report data and queries on right-of-ways, business leases, and renewable energy projects. So this NPM will provide interim instructions regarding official duties and responsibilities for BIA nationwide. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as we said, the purpose of the NPM establishes BIA policy for the effective and efficient processing of right-of-ways, business leases, and for the bill funding and bill projects. This NPM, like I said, provides interim instructions, and it has been sent out to all the regions and offices, and they are directed to promptly and immediately review and approve pending right-of-way and business leases for infrastructure, telecommunication, and renewable energy purposes. The right-of-ways that are in TAMS, BIA is directed to complete these right-of-ways and business leases in an expedient manner. And also, if the right-of-way is not complete, application to make sure to get that information back out to applicants. And so this way we'll have consistent processing nationwide. We're communicating with the applicants, which are tribal nations, and helping them to exercise their sovereign rights and to help govern their lands to support self-sufficiency, conservation practices, and climate resilience. The bill was implemented in January 26, 2021 by President Biden, and we do have a link later on in the session to the bill information through the White House Council, Native American Affairs. Okay, next slide, please. This just goes on to talk a little bit about what the bill is. As Mr. Pangaria stated, Congress did pass this legislation to provide funding to support infrastructure funding out in Indian country. It provides substantial funding, which is available through BIA, and the contact information will be listed at the back. So if you have any questions, you can take a look at that and also let us know, and we can provide that information as well. We've never seen any type of funding like this before, so we're really happy that this is available for tribes and for tribal communities. And we look forward to assisting you all with any questions. Okay, that's it for me. I am going to turn it over to Jana Waters, who is from Real Estate Services. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Turn on my video just for a short minute, just to say hi to everybody. I'm Jana Waters. I'm a realty specialist with the Division of Real Estate Services. Just going to go over a few of these items with you. I'm going to stop my video. So we have a few different parts that we're going to cover with regard to the NPM Trust 44. First of all, we're going to cover a little bit of broadband. Okay, here's a little bit of history on these items. So this first one talks about July 11, 2019, with the FCC releasing a report on the matter of transforming the 2.5 gigahertz band. Within this, there was a tribal priority window, and we're calling that the priority window, that opened from February 3rd to September 2nd of 2020. So like I said, we're going to talk a little bit of history there. The FCC began to grant license applications in late 2020, and it still continues to do that. But that priority window actually closed September 2nd, 2020. The tribes are granted licenses under the priority window are subject to stricter deadlines for building out broadband network infrastructure to serve 50% of the population in the license area within 2 years of receiving the license, and 80% of the population within 5 years. So those are some key dates that, that are in the past. So, but we have to know that stuff before we move on to other parts of NPM Trust 44. Okay, on December 21st, 2020, Congress passed the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. This provided for $1 billion for a new tribal broadband connectivity grant program. Eligible uses for this include broadband infrastructure deployment on tribal lands, meaning that in which the surface estate or an undivided interest in the surface estate is owned by one or more tribes in trust or restricted fee status. The term also includes the surface estate of lands held in trust for a tribe but reserved for BIA administrative purposes, and includes the surface estate of lands held in trust for an Indian corporation chartered under Section 17 of the IRA. Grant recipients are required to expend awarded funds within 1 year of receiving them. Unexpended funds may be rescinded. The Secretary of Commerce has the authority to extend this deadline for infrastructure projects under certain conditions. However, it's not mandatory. Recently, the bill was passed and it added $2 billion more for broadband projects. Okay, talk a little bit about renewable energy. Okay, in 2013, leasing regulations at 25 CFR 162 introduced wind and solar resource leases. And bill, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, includes resources to support renewable energy infrastructure. Furthermore, it is in the national interest to support tribes seeking to stand up for renewable energy projects within their lands. Talk a little bit about right-of-way regulations. In 2016, the right-of-way regulations that are found at Title 25 CFR Part 169 incorporated many streamlining initiatives, including established timeframes for the processing and decision-making of right-of-way application, and providing the maximum extent possible deference to the tribe's determination of documents needed. On tribal lands, it is necessary not only to maximize the use of federal funds, but also to provide tribes with the maximum flexibility and economic development opportunities to leverage these programs for the benefit of their tribal communities. Okay, scope. The NPM Trust 44, the scope. This policy applies to all BIA programs, offices, regions, and agencies involved in the right-of-way and business lease. Policy and procedures. It is the BIA's policy to comply with all federal laws and regulations, as well as the Department of Interior policies regarding processing and approval of right-of-way and lease applications for tribal infrastructure projects. One of the keys here is that a review of the submitted package must be completed within 5 days, and we have to allow the applicant to know whether their package is complete or not. So that's one of the ways that we are actually streamlining and becoming more timely with regard to these right-of-way projects. So keep that in mind. Right-of-way and business lease applications on tribal lands where the tribe owns 100% of the tract. If a tribe or a tribal utility is the applicant, the tribe does not need BIA approval of a right-of-way on tribal land. For leases, an independent legal entity owned and operated by a tribe may have to obtain a lease from owners of the land before taking possession of the land. The tribe, as an Indian landowner who owns 100% of the trust or restricted interest in a tract, does not need a lease to possess tribal land. As a result of the land buyback program, there may be allotted tracts of land where the tribe owns 100% of the trust interest in the tract. The right-of-way application, grant, lease document, map of definite location, and any other tribal broadband use agreements for project development with states and federal agencies must be filed with the BIA for recording in the system of record. The Trust Asset and Accounting Management System. We talk about TAMS. TAMS is our system of record, and the Land Titles and Records Office is similar to a county recording office where they send all of our trust documents in to be recorded. And that must be within 30 days. If the right-of-way or lease is a part of one of the bill projects included in the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program and a bill grant, a copy of the grants must be the authorizing document rather than a tribal resolution. A lease is not needed to possess Indian land if the applicant is a 25 USC 477 corporate entity that manages or has the power to manage the tribal land directly under a federal charter or under a tribal authorization. A right-of-way or lease is not needed if the applicant has entered into a contract or an agreement that encumbers tribal land under Section 81, 25 USC Section 81. If the applicant is a third party, the tribe may exercise all the regulatory permissions, including negotiating for any payment amount and asking the secretary to waive the valuation and bond and insurance requirements. And the right-of-way grant could be utilized as one grant for all tracts traversed by the right-of-way. Okay, approval of the application must occur 60 days after making the determination that the application is complete. That is actually a decision within 60 days after we receive a complete package. So that may be approval and it actually may be denial, or if we are actually missing something. So keep that in mind, that it's 60 days after we determine that the application is complete, you should expect a decision on whether approving or denying there. The right-of-way or lease application, grant, or lease document, map of definite location, and any tribal use agreements connected to the tribal infrastructure and broadband project development agreements with states and other federal agencies must be filed with the BIA for recording in the official system of record. And this is just stating that, making that statement one more time. Right-of-way and business lease applications for allotted lands. Okay, we moved from the tribal lands, now we're moving to the allotted lands. So if the tribe or tribal utility or third party is an applicant, the individual Indian owners may negotiate for any payment amount and may waive the valuation requirement. The right-of-way may be approved for the negotiated amount per 25 CFR Part 169.112, and for business leases, 25 CFR Part 162.421. I think I may have said 169. So, but it's right there. 25 CFR Part 169.112 and 25 CFR Part 162.421. BIA will determine the number of owners, undivided interest in a fractionated tract of land for the purpose of calculating the requisite consent based on BIA records on the date the application is submitted to the BIA. If the tribe already owns the majority of the interest, consent of the other fractional owners is not required, but all of the owners must be notified by the tribe. And a review of the application must occur immediately upon making the determination that the application is complete. Okay, right-of-way applications crossing over multiple tracks. Okay. Applicants may submit one right-of-way application with supporting documentation for multiple contiguous tracks if applicable. And BIA will issue one grant for all the tracks traversed by the right-of-way for the infrastructure project if applicable. Okay, and now I'll be turning it over to Simone Jones.
Thank you, Jana. Good afternoon, everyone. Yad A, my name is Simone Jones. I'm a realty specialist with the Division of Real Estate Services Central Office, and I'm just going to go with you with the remaining slides. If you joined our presentation a little bit into the presentation, don't worry. We will have a recording for you after. So just wanted to put my camera on for a little bit, and I'll go ahead and turn it off and get into the wind energy evaluation leases, otherwise known as WHEELS, and the wind solar resource leases, also known as WSR. WHEELS are commonly just short-term leases that authorize possession of Indian lands. They're really for the purpose of installing, operating, maintaining that instrumentation and that associated infrastructure used to evaluate the wind resources for electricity generation. A tribe that conducts wind resources on its tribal land does not need a wheel. Also for a wheel, evaluation is not required. In addition to a performance bond, typically terms for wheels being short term, they're generally no longer than 3 years. The regs still, however, require insurance. And there's the citation for this is 162.528 is a description of wheels. Next slide. And wheels generally can come before a WSR or wind solar lease, but they're not a precondition or a prerequisite for getting into a WSR. So you don't really have to get into a wheel, first to get into a WSR. But should you do a wheel and evaluate all the resources and decide, hey, this is a location we'd like to pursue, our regulations at 25 CFR 162.38 are where you can go for additional information on WSRs. But for our presentation today, WSRs, we just want to share that they're leases that authorize a lessee to possess Indian land to conduct your solar energy resource development projects. For a tribe that conducts wind and resource activities on its own tribal land, it does not require a WSR. The term generally for WSRs may not to exceed 50 years. So next slide. Under a WSR, the tribe may negotiate for a payment amount and may waive the valuation requirement. As it pertains to individually owned Indian land, they may be approved for the negotiated amount, but there are also opportunities for landowners to consent to waiver evaluation as well. And those can be found in those particular citations. An appraisal evaluation will be requested, however, from AVSO unless it's waived under that specific citation. And as we mentioned with this NPM, our duty is to ensure that the review is happen immediately. And so that is also a feature for this NPM as it pertains to renewable energy. Next slide. I think you can go to the next slide. Okay, so for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you probably have heard us mention our TAMS system, our Trust Asset Accounting Management System. And this is a system where we house all our information on rights-of-way from the time when the BIA began to approve rights-of-way. There's quite a bit of information in there. And so this slide is actually for our BIA staff, and as well as I think for certain partners. And this is really for you to know that as part of our desire to make sure that infrastructure happens out in Indian lands, part of that is ensuring that our our information in our trust asset accounting management system as it pertains to right-of-ways that may be in our system show pending status, but they may have been approved in the past. This is really for BIA to ensure that we review the data in our system, and we make sure that it has the appropriate data to aid the field. So when they're working with applicants, and there maybe this is a right-of-way that is seeking to be upgraded or maybe expanded, that we can be sure that the information that we have in our system is accurate. So for the field, the BIA field staff, central office DRES will be working with you. We've mentioned this previous to our field before about looking at the data within the in the system and making sure that we have that information validated for right-of-ways that may show pending within our system. So that's what this slide speaks to. Next slide. Next slide. And in addition, we also will be tracking new projects, new rights-of-way projects that are received to us under this Bureau of this BIL infrastructure initiative. And within our TAMS system, we have a module called Realty Proposal, and that module is to track when we get that first applicant. Maybe we have that first applicant who comes in and give us a notice of intent to say, hey, we're thinking about a fiber optic line, or we're thinking about a water system, and they come in to the BIA. The BIA, we can track that very first activity. But more importantly, we want to track when we, in accordance to this NPM, we want to track when we have received that application for right-of-way. In accordance to the regulations, we are supposed to acknowledge that receipt. In accordance to this NPM, we're supposed to do that within 5 days. And then we're supposed to also ensure that we expeditiously review and approve this application. And so our system, TAMS Realty Proposal, has the ability for us to track activities for the receipt of that lease or right-of-way, as well as when we've made decision upon it. So we will be ensuring that the staff continue to encode these activities when they receive BIL project applications, even down to that very first meeting with the tribe, or with the applicant on their project. We have the ability to track that. And so we have some consistent key activities that we've shared with our field to be sure that they input this information as required. So next slide. And this is probably a little bit of our more important slide here. It's actually kind of changed versions. I think we'll get the proper version to you. But for resource links, understandably, our presentation here speaks to what the BIA will do when we receive that complete right-of-way application or lease application. But as you guys know in the field who've worked on acquiring leases or rights-of-way, there's quite an activity that happens before that. That's in getting your required documentation, such as your surveys, the level of NEPA review that's required for that project, or even if you have to go through the appraisal evaluation route. And so this particular slide, we just wanted to show you where we have our BIA lease right-of-way and lease handbooks online. We also have a copy of our NPM online, and this slide also gives you a kind of a place to jump to see our map with all our regions and the tribes, and then you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs to that particular region that you may be working with. And so we hope that in working on these BIL projects, I think our key message here at DRES is that you make contact with the regions immediately, as soon as you can. I think the sooner you talk, you collaborate, and you work on your projects, the better outcome that we'll have to get much needed infrastructure out to Indian country. So I'll go ahead and leave you with this last slide. And I think we'll go ahead and have our session end with questions, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to our acting division chief. Ahiahat, thank you so much for your attention and for joining our presentation today.
Great, thank you, Simone and Gianna. Appreciate it. They've worked very hard along with the other Division Real Estate Services staff to put the NPM together, put the presentation together, and conduct these small training presentations. This is of high importance to BIA and to the Department of Interior. So we appreciate having this opportunity to present and share this information with you all today. I do see in the chat there's a few questions. We did record this session, and so we can provide a copy of the training and a copy of the PowerPoint to all of the attendees. So we'll make that available and get that out to everybody. And then the question for NEPA, where does NEPA fit into the process? Jana, do you want to cover that one? That kind of goes through your slides.
Yeah, the slides themselves and the training today was on the policy itself, and the highlights of NPM Trust 44. It doesn't change what's in the regs. So when we're dealing with the regs, if we're dealing with rights of way, you will follow what's up 25 CFR Part 169. If we're talking about business leases and any of the leasing portion of it, we'll go over Title 25 Part 162. Each one of those sets of regulations does have the requirements for approval of whichever transaction that you're dealing with. And that would include NEPA, unless by law there is something that would exclude it. But please go and follow and take a read at Title 25 169 for rights of way and Title 25 162 for leasing. Anything you would like to add, Simone, to that?
No, Jen, I think you covered that really well. One of the resource links that we do have is that leads you to our handbook. In our handbook, it shows you the flow chart for a right-of-way as well as the business lease process. And so it does talk a little bit about the NEPA, and it's really in the pre-grant and pre-lease activity that you would do that process. So just wanted to add that. Thank you, Jana.
Great, thanks, Jana. Thanks, Simone. And as we just posted into the chat, so this is what Simone was just talking about. We did provide the BIA regional contacts. If you have questions, in-depth questions about processing right-of-ways, you can reach out to your local agency and regional office. And then we did, as Simone said, share the links for the bill resource information right out of the White House fact sheet page, and then also contact information for the handbooks that we have available through BIA.gov. And then we do have another session coming up Thursday, June 23rd. And so we will provide the same information to tribal leaders and then also to any other attendees. And we have been sharing this information through different organizations. Jana and Simone did provide a presentation to, we did provide information to the White House Council, Native American Affairs, and so different organizations that we've been participating with in our federal partners, and appreciate their coordination as well. They've been sharing information with us.
Thank you, Carla. Yeah, just wanted to read a couple questions in the chat. I think you were answering that question, Carla, about BIA's coordination with states on long-term broadband projects. Just recently, Jana provided a presentation on the right-of-way and some information on the NPM to the state and tribal cohorts with the White House Council of Native American Affairs and the I know I'm going to get the NTIA memorandum or acronym incorrect, so I'll just say NTIA. But we did do that effort. Just a quick answer to that question. Another question in the chat was, is there discussion? There was discussion about advanced notification to BIA about BIL funded projects. Is advanced notification required, or could a cover letter be included with the right-of-way application that it is a BIL project? I think in answer to your question, Denise, a cover letter with your application would be appropriate. But if we do have to provide some follow-up guidance to that, we will. But I think you're on the right track with that. I hope that answers that question. And that's all the questions in the chat. One more question about a streamlined process for third-party or non-federal applicants for obtaining approvals on allotments. Well, a lot of allotments, acquisition of rights of way and allotments, I think, as you know, Alan, can be very time consuming. Sometimes ownership can be a moving target with Indian allotments. We always have to consider our trust responsibility to our Indian landowner. And so their consent for a right-of-way is always necessary and required. But the field can help you in how to work with your allottees out there to regularly ensure that, you know, you're getting those ownership updates as you need them, because they're really, when you're dealing with an allotment where there's more than several owners, unfortunately, the only way to really kind of streamline that effort is to get working with them early, as soon as you can, and work with your regions. I hope that provides some answer to that question, but it definitely can be time consuming. So that's all the questions in the chat right now, Carla. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Simone. Appreciate you helping monitor the chat. I know it's kind of busy talking and then monitoring the chat, so thank you all for your questions. We appreciate it. Again, you know, this bipartisan infrastructure law and the funding is once in a generation investment. And so with the BIA prioritization of this, you know, for the department and for BIA, we really appreciate the opportunity to present to you all and help answer any questions. With that, that's all the information that we have today. And so I'm not sure, I can't see who's all on, if Ms. Blackhair is still on the line or if Mr. Garriott's still on the line. If there's any closing remarks that they would like to say.
Is Mr. Garriott still on? I know he's meeting with some dignitaries this afternoon. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Each and every one of you are valued in our role and our responsibilities in these processes. Take pride in the fact that your jobs help provide climate resilience, support efforts for ecosystem restoration. You contribute to the reduction of fractionated Indian lands in one form or another as we manage these processes through the allotments, and provide opportunities to tribes to support, manage, protect, and develop their trust assets and natural resources. Our work is very challenging. We provide this support to you as you provide inspiration to us as we manage Indian irrigations, dams, water, transportation, protect lives, property from land and wildfires, developing policy for management of invasive species, traveling long distances to assist where technical support is needed, and continuously help provide and formulate a communicating these types of policies and directives for collaborating with partners to advance our goals and our president's initiatives. The Department of Interior and BIA are committed to promoting and facilitating information exchanges with our tribal nations, our Alaska Native corporations, federal partners, state and local leaders to identify and implement ways to support tribal self-determination and tribal self-governance as we work with the bill. Like Carla said, this is once in a lifetime funding opportunities to expand and provide this investment to Indian country. As we work towards these goals and objectives, as we build our narratives to advance and apply and supply Congress for the demonstration that more funding is needed, I ask that you all continue that charge, continue that great work as we work towards providing the best opportunity for our tribes, our tribal nations, our families, our relatives out there across the country. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jana. Yeah, on behalf of the Division of Real Estate Services, appreciate everybody's time and attendance. Appreciate Jonna, you and Wizzy and the department making this a priority. And we wish everybody a safe and happy week. And thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.